Imagine living in a world where a slip of the tongue, a rumor, or a forbidden romance could brand you for life. Across centuries and continents, women were punished not only for crimes, but for breaking roles, talking too loudly, loving the wrong person, resisting control. This film looked at the devices, rituals, and laws that policed women's bodies and voices, and how shame itself became a sentence. The code behind the punishments. Before the instruments came, the idea, order depended on women's obedience. In Christian Europe and in many other cultures, female transgression was framed as a threat to community stability, property lines, and spiritual purity. Witchcraft, promiscuity, gossip, and unruly behavior were treated less as individual choices and more as contagious disorder to be stamped out publicly. That's why so many punishments weren't private corrections but performances, pain staged before neighbors, clergy, and magistrates, so the lesson would spread faster than the truth. The Scold's bridle, silencing the voice. In 16th, 17th century England and Scotland, a woman labeled a scold, one who gossiped, argued, or disturbed the peace, could be fitted with the Scold's bridle, also called the branks. This iron headpiece looked theatrical, a cage for the face, sometimes adorned with horns or grotesque flourishes. Its centerpiece was a sharp bit that pressed the tongue, scraping and pinning it to prevent speech. The device turned a living person into a public warning. Paraded through streets or fixed to the ducking stool, the bridle inflicted pain, humiliation, and silence in equal measure. The message was simple. A woman's words could cost her voice. The Shrews Fiddle, locking the body. Shrew became a weaponized word for women who argued, commanded, or refused to shrink into domestic duty. In parts of the German-speaking world and Austria, authorities used the Shrews Fiddle, a heavy wooden collar with one large hole for the neck and two for the wrists. Once locked, the wearer's hands were trapped beneath her chin, immobilizing ordinary life. Some versions fastened two people face to face, forcing quarrelers to reconcile under public stares. Variants turn up in Denmark, Iran, Japan, and even Roman contexts, proof that restraint as spectacle had global appeal. The point wasn't only confinement, it was choreography, displaying disobedience, then rendering it harmless. Cucking and ducking stools, shame and risk. By the late Middle Ages, English towns kept cucking stools for public shaming. A chair, sometimes toilet-like, where the condemned sat, strapped in, while crowds jeered. The harsher cousin was the ducking stool, attached to a pivoting beam over water. Accused of disorderliness, sex work, or witchcraft, a woman could be plunged repeatedly into a river or pond. The ritual looked like civic order at work. In reality, it was a coin toss between terror and drowning. The cruel irony of trial by water lingered. If she sank and died, she might be declared innocent. If she survived, the community had its proof. The drunkard's cloak, the barrel of shame, punishment could be heavy, literal, and absurd. In early modern England, the drunkard's cloak, an empty beer cask worn like a tunic with holes cut for head and arms, paraded public offenders through town. Though used primarily for drunkenness, it was sometimes adapted for women accused of sexual misconduct. The barrel was crushing and awkward. The march ritualized humiliation. Townspeople didn't need judges or juries to understand the verdict. The wearer's body announced it, swaying under wood, laboring beneath community laughter. Marking the body, the Scarlet Letter. Made real, Nathaniel Hawthorne's Hester Prynne has roots in real practices. In places like Plymouth Colony, mid-17th century statutes required adulterers to wear letters stitched on clothing A, AD, or other marks. Failure to display the insignia meant flogging and fresh disgrace. Branding and tattooing appeared in parts of Europe as well, searing moral labels into flesh so identity and offense became indistinguishable. Punishment did not end with a sentence. It lingered in thread, scar, and stare. A woman's reputation was engineered to arrive before she did. Pricking and scratching, the witch-finder's toolkit. During witch persecutions in England and Scotland, examiners sought witches' marks, moles, blemishes, or numb patches said to be diabolical signs. Professional prickers used special needles to probe the skin. If a spot didn't bleed or hurt, suspicion hardened into evidence. Another ritual, the scratch test, let an afflicted accuser rake the accused's skin until blood flowed. If the victim's symptoms eased, guilt was confirmed. These methods wrapped pseudo-medicine and panic into a ritual of pain where proof was pre-written and women's bodies were canvases for answers everyone already wanted. Status degradation, erasing rank and rights. Not all punishments drew blood. Some erased status. In Augustan Rome, an adulterous woman could lose privileges of citizenship and pay steep fines, legal exile within her own city. In Korea's Joseon dynasty, noble women convicted of adultery or remarriage could be demoted to lowborn status, losing rights and transmitting stigma to their descendants, who were barred from office. These sanctions turned family trees into warning posters. Even if the woman endured, her lineage did not. Law reached forward in time to remind future generations who had fallen. Closing reflection. Across eras, the accusations changed costume. The logic stayed chillingly familiar. Silence the critic, shame the lover, isolate the rebel, mark the body so the story sticks. Today, the props have shifted from iron and oak to screens and comment threads. But public discipline still thrives on display and contagion. When we study these devices, we're not gawking at relics. We're recognizing a pattern, how power makes punishment visible, so fear can do the rest. Remember the women inside these stories, not just as victims of curious contraptions, but as people who endured systems designed to make them disappear. Their voices survive in court rolls, parish notes, and the stubborn fact that we can still name the tools meant to erase them. The past is telling us something plain. Whenever a society confuses obedience with virtue, it will invent new ways to make disobedience hurt.